Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's your boy Barlo-B-Theorizing, and welcome back to the Barlow Zone, home of the one and only demon hunter King Kaido himself sent to Azeroth. How's everybody doing today? I hope y'all are feeling as good as I am this morning. Nah, I I gotta start this one off by, give credit where credit's due. I was scrolling through my news feed on my phone last night and I came across this, I guess, story. I don't know. I apologize if any of y'all really like game rant stuff. Uh, I don't. I see their stuff as clickbait more than anything actually lending itself to the community. But I did come across this article, and the title got me, so I clicked on it, and I barely got through the bullet points at the top, but it got me thinking because you know a lot of game rant stuff is really easy to tear apart for anybody who's familiar with the series. Like, for example, with this one, yeah, sure, Rox and Harold didn't split the sky like Rogers and Whitebeard did, but we're this is still at a point before the beginning of Rox's journey, before he got stronger, before he got to the point where he was at a threat at God Valley that needed Rogers and Garb to take care of him. Now, sure, they could be right. It could be a devil fruit, whatever. I'm not here to talk about Rox today. I've been doing a lot of that lately. Rox, his crew, Blackbeard, a lot of Rox and Rox adjacent stuff. I actually want to talk about the Strawhats because that was what the article made me think of for some reason. The line about Rogers having better hockey than Rox, which could be. I'm not arguing against that. Uh, they were trying to argue that that was confirmation that Rox has a devil fruit. Again, could be. I'm not here to speculate on that today. It's not really enough information to go on. But it got me thinking about Luffy and the Straw Hats because power scaling is something we all love to do, right? Like, there's no doubt the corner of the fan base that are still the Roger stance. He was the strongest that ever was. Couldn't nobody hold a sword to him, couldn't nobody mess with him. Whatever it was, he had the two strongest wings of any pirate crew in Silvers and Scopper. And then, no doubt there's going to be some. Rox already showed what he got. He would have bodied Roger in a 1v1. Roger needed Garp there. I don't know. I'm somewhere in between. Mostly because I don't feel like we've really gotten enough information to be able to speculate on that just yet. That information is probably coming soon, though, potentially even in the next chapter. But why did I start thinking about Luffy and the Straw Hats, right? Because one of the first thoughts I had when I started reading the article, and this is where a lot of my theories come from, just reading articles, watching YouTubes, and these ideas come to my head. Like, for example, I was reading this article and it occurred to me, is Luffy already the Pirate King? Now, that's a loaded question, right? I can admit it. That is definitely, probably, maybe, okay, there's a chance that might be part of the title. Clickbait and all that. It's what YouTube thrives on. I try not to participate, but hey, everybody wants to be heard and seen, right? So that's a loaded question, though. Is Luffy already the Pirate King? And why would I start thinking about that? Now, you guys might see me looking down at my computer every now and then. Unlike a lot of my videos, I didn't script this one, but I did make sure I jotted down some notes because sometimes I feel like I get ahead of myself when I'm talking about my theories and I forget to mention some angles that might help cement the idea for some people. And without those ideas, I no doubt have a lot of people watching the videos thinking, oh, Barlow's capping, Barlow's just out here fanficking, which I do like to do sometimes. Theorizing is stressful. There's a lot you have to consider, and when it comes to fan fiction, it's just, oh, hey, this is kind of cool. Let me get on my computer, type something up real quick. But I did jot down a few notes because there were a few things that I need to make sure I add into this video this time, and I'm gonna do my best. 14 more minutes is my theorized top. I really don't want to make videos longer than 20-25 tops. That last half hour one was rough, but I was on a roll and I was feeling it, and it was something I really wanted to talk about. But anyway, so the first question that comes with this is, what is a king, right? And according to the dictionary, a king is a male ruler of an independent state, especially one who inherits the position by power, or by birthright, sorry, not power. And just off that, one might think, okay, Luffy's not the ruler of a state, right? So how could Barlow think he's a king? But I followed that up with a Google search. What is a ruler's state, right? And it gave me this interesting one. A state is a political entity where supreme authority is bestowed on a single individual. And now it kind of opens up, right? Because the Thousand Sunny and the Going Merry, by extension, were Luffy's states. Sure, Nami might beat the crap out of Luffy for doing or saying something stupid, but at the end of the day, whether on the ship or on land, the decision on where to go and what to do falls to Luffy. It's just, okay, Luffy wants to get us to Elbaf, right? We're on Egghead right now. We ain't got a log post to get us there, and we're gonna pretend like the Giants weren't here to guide us to Elbaf for this little theoretical hypothetical, if you will. So Luffy tells Nami, Jinbei, Usopp, like, hey, this is where we're going next, and then it falls to the crew to successfully get them there, which is a captain's job, right? They're supposed to be the strongest, the one that protects the ship at all cost against any threat that comes by. So for the sake of this, I am arguing that the ship itself, whether it was the Going Merry or the Sunny, is the state that Luffy is king of for now. Because as the story's gone on, as we've evolved from the little dinghy to recruiting Usopp and the Going Merry to rest in peace Merry at Water 7, and Frankie building us the Thousand Sunny, Luffy's always had that ship that was his. Now, by the same argument, we could also call every captain of a One Piece pirate crew a king in their own right, correct? But it not only being the captain of his ship, because that's been the thing since chapter 1. And I am giving ship credit to the dinghy. What the sealing deal for me was after Wano. Now all of a sudden Luffy isn't just the captain of a strong pirate crew. Now he is a Yonko, which the American translation, and to anybody who is more familiar with Japanese, I do apologize, but to Western audiences, that's translated as the emperors of the sea. An emperor is a synonym for king. So not only is Luffy the king of his own ship and his own crew, his little nation on the Sunny, right? He is now, in the world's eyes, seen as one of the kings of the sea, which extends his state beyond the sunny to the waves around them. That's a lot more difficult to king, as it were. Sorry, not really sure good adjective to use right there. You can't really rule over the seas, as it were, because, especially in One Piece, there are sentient creatures under the waves. And we're not saying Luffy, Shanks, Blackbeard, or Buggy are in control of any of them. Small chance King Kaido was, because, king of the beasts. But let me go ahead and move on, because there was something with the crew that I found really interesting as well, that kind of connects to a big theme of One Piece and the importance of found family, right? Obviously we're all more than aware of the infamy of One Piece parents. Either you're a dad who left your son behind, or you're a mom who died after giving birth, or you're the outlier and you're Ida and you're just the greatest mom that ever mommed in One Piece. God, I love that woman. Everybody deserves a mom like Ida and a dad like Henry Allen. I really like Barry Allen's backstory and family and all that. But anyway, I digress, because what did I notice about the crew, right? And how did that pertain to the story of found family and One Piece? Luffy has the most diverse crew, right? Let's think about it. Let's think of, the big players, right? You got Shanks specifically putting together a crew of non-devil fruit users. You got Blackbeard specifically putting together a crew of only devil fruit users. And you got Buggy, the other big player, failing his way to the top. But even if we look at Buggy's crew, it is a plethora of devil fruit users filling some of the higher ranks, and non-devil fruit users, including the greatest swordsman in Mihawk. So you got one leaning one way, right? You got Shanks hard against devil fruits. You got Blackbeard super hard on for devil fruits. You got Buggy somewhere in the middle, and you got Luffy somewhere in the middle, right? But it goes beyond that, because Luffy is the exact middle. Like, not somewhat, not leaning slightly that way. Luffy has built a crew that is balance and acceptance. So let's take a quick look at each of them real quick, because obviously, we're going to start with Monkey D. Luffy, the king himself, the GOAT, future king of the pirates, potentially future king of the world, potentially future god. Luffy's story is finally kicking off, it feels like, right? Like, it feels like for the last 28 years, it's been let's build up everybody around Luffy. And Luffy's characteristic of just being charismatic than a mofo, being happy, being positive. I blanked on the word right there, I apologize. But, aside from the Nika connection, he's also a master of devil fruits and a human. To our knowledge, he's just a regular dude, which follows up the next two. Zoro and Sanji are also kind of in that. But then you got Zoro, speaking of, a master swordsman, and I am going to extend this theory a bit to wrap around another theory of mine, that Zoro is going to end up being the hockey master by the end of the story. Which, might get the Sanji fans riled up, like, oh, how you gonna say Zoro's gonna be the master of all three branches of hockey? Easy, because that leads us into the Sanji point of him being a scientific masterpiece. And that is what made me start thinking about the rest of the crew, is when I started thinking about Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, the big three, right? The three strong, heavy hitters, powerhouses, gonna knock anybody out for looking at anybody on the crew wrong, right? They all do it a different way, all three of them. And in doing so, Luffy has built a crew of inclusion of every aspect of the One Piece world, which was Charlotte Linlin's dream. She wanted to build a nation of acceptance where anybody from any race could come and be accepted. Admittedly, she had her own heavenly tribute yet to pay. But Luffy has accomplished Big Mom's dream, which is wild because it's not just the big three, right? Then you got Usopp, coward, visionary, sniper. And I really like this theory about him being a Dosendata, or at least half Dosendata. It explains a lot about him as a design and his deep connection with the Giants that we don't have any other real explanation for right now, right? I mean, we all have our hero or idol or whatever that we like to follow in pop culture. And yes, pop culture does extend to anime, because for me, it started with Goku and became Natsu. Luffy's in the running now, but for me, I've learned more from these animated or drawn characters than I have from anybody in my real actual life. So to me, Goku, Natsu, and Luffy are kind of my heroes, which is cool because I'm never going to get the chance to meet them. So, can't ruin that. But that's right, the Dosendata angle. I really like that theory so far, at least until we get confirmation he is, or more information on his personal connection to the Giants. And the Tontara, actually, he made some moves on Zoe. I'm just remembering. So, Usopp has a pretty interesting connection to both the Tontara and the Giants, which is what a Dosendata is, a crossbreed of a Tontara and a Giant. So, for those reasons, I do really like the theory that Usopp is the Dosendata, and it helps elaborate on this theory, because that's just another race that Luffy has accepted onto his crew. Now, that part is theory, headcanon, whatever you want to call it, fanfic. It's not confirmed by any means yet. It's just a lot of people taking the context clues potentially a little too far. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Nami. Hers is pretty simple, but probably one of the more important roles that needed to be filled in being a master navigator and cartographer. Because it's something that's always kind of been in the back of my mind, right? Nami wants to map the world. But once One Piece is done, once the red line comes down, things are going to look different. Some islands might not be there. Other islands might have merged into one larger island. And for that fact, whoever ends up coming out on top in this story needs a cartographer, because they're going to need somebody to redraw the world as it is now, because things are going to for sure change. With the collapse of the red line, honestly, we might be looking at the end of the New World and Paradise and the Calm Belts, because there's a chance. Now, I'm not saying a good chance or a bad chance. There's just a chance that the red line is affecting the flow of water in those areas, right? So with the world changing, we're going to need a cartographer. We're going to need somebody to remap everything and put out a fresh, up-to-date map. You want to say free of charge because of Luffy, but I mean, we're talking about Nami. That map's probably going to cost some berries, right? But, moving on, next we got Chopper. Not only is he an expert doctor, something a new civilization is 100% going to need, he's also an animal. Like, that's something we, as a community, as a fan base, forget a lot. Chopper is a reindeer. Like, dude is just an animal who, in his hunger, ate the wrong piece of fruit one day and gains, sentience, conscious intelligence. So honestly, this is kind of a a new race almost. And speaking of new races, that brings us to Frankie, the master shipwright, the man who can build any ship from anything put in front of him, and a cyborg. Sure, he started his life as a regular dude, like, most of the rest of the crew. 90% of the rest, 80% of the rest of the crew started out as a normal dude, but he made some modifications to himself after the big accident, and he is a cyborg now. So there's another new race to add to the growing list of people Luffy has invited into his family, right? Hey, sorry if the angle changed. I had to do a quick reshoot to add in something I forgot, and feel free to give me all the flack. I can't even believe I forgot this one. Maybe it just seemed obvious to me, but I did forget to mention Robin, who is probably one of the bigger pieces in this, and the fact that, yeah, she may have been a normal human at the beginning of her journey, but since she has fully embraced this demon bit aesthetic framing, whatever you want to call it, essentially making her a demon on the crew alongside Zoro, which I also forgot to mention earlier. But aside from that, she's also an intellectual, somebody who actively wants to know what was going on, what's going to go on, kind of a woman after my own heart, as well as being an explorer. It's some that was lightly elaborated on during Skypiea, but the fact that Luffy also found an explorer adds some weight to Nolan's story during Skypiea. Bringing us around to, I'm going to go ahead and move over to Jinbei real quick. I want to save Brook for last, but Jinbei being a fishman, check on another new race, and a master in hand-to-hand combat. To our knowledge, isn't using Haki or a devil fruit, curiously enough. Sorry about that weird cut. I had to run myself to El Baño. But anyway, that brings us around to Brook. Now, why did I save Brook for last? And honestly, it's kind of basic. I'm building it up a little too much. But not only is he a new race, because, being a skeleton, sure, Brook started out as a regular dude, but now he is a living skeleton. That is a new race. But most importantly, if you remember, from the moment Luffy and Zoro set out on the dinghy heading out, the first thing that Luffy wanted, the first crewmate he wanted to recruit, what was most important to Luffy, even though Zoro was pointing out, nah, we need somebody to navigate, we need somebody to cook, like, what are you talking about? Luffy's all, I want to find a musician. And then the revelation of Nika and the doom, 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 doom. I can't remember exactly how the onomatopoeias went, but the heartbeat, the drums of liberation, right? Music is important, and that's a wild thought to me, because that tracks in the real world too, right? Like, I can't say 100% because there are no doubt people out there who would rather not interact with music, and I got nothing bad to say about them. Everybody's living their best life and the best way they think is good for them, right? But music, historically speaking, has been something that brought people together, all the way back. I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I read through the Bible, but I'm pretty sure I do even remember instances in the Bible where music and food brought people together. So, even if that's your beliefs, at the very beginning, music was one of the most important things. And, it goes back, the Greeks loved music, the Romans, even India, can't remember. I don't want to list them by their religion, because Hinduism, it's a big thing there, but so is, you know, Taoism. There are multiple religions in India, but the country itself, India, historically has had a connection to music. Japan has had a connection to music. America obviously loves our musicians and musical acts. Like, you know, for example, there's this, I don't want to call him small musician because he isn't. Dude's been around for a long time, and I've been talking about him for a long time. But you know, Prof is, so many times throughout a single day I'll make a reference to a lyric that he said in a song one time. One of the biggest references I like to make is, oh God, it's probably like 12, 13, decade and a half old now, but it's called Permission by Prof. You know, if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's a really, really positive, uplifting hip hop song. And I love making reference to that because it also, I can make that reference in reference to One Piece, right? So to bring it around, wrap up, I did have to take the break, so I think I'm coming up on about my 25-minute benchmark. I would like to present the idea that because of all this, Luffy is already a pirate king. Getting to Laugh Tale may not be as important for Luffy anymore. And that's why, and it's something I've been saying for a long time, you know, at least a couple years now, a few years. I don't think Luffy is the one who gets given the title of King of the Pirates in the world's eyes. I think when they get to Laugh Tale, Luffy will realize that that wasn't an important step, that he's already done what he needed to do to be able to enact his real dream, because we have to keep in mind, becoming Pirate King is not Luffy's dream. That's just something he keeps saying he needs to be. We have never heard, seen, even caught a faint whiff of what Luffy's actual dream is. Now, you know, we could probably take some points from Blackbeard and Buggy and other people, but I do believe Buggy is the one who is given the title of Pirate King at the end. And potentially even by Luffy, you know, after Luffy has this realization like, oh, I didn't really need this. I'm already, you know what, Buggy, you go ahead and take it. You and Shanks do what you do. I have something else I need to go take care of. And that's how it's going to end. The final war after Laugh Tale. Let me know what you guys think, though. You know, this is, I admit, one of my more out there theories. I definitely still have some room to work on it, so I would love to hear your feedback. Whether you agree, whether you think I'm onto something, or whether you think I am off by miles. You guys know me, I'd rather hear that anyway. Let me know in the comments. Do you guys think I'm onto something here? Do you guys think I'm off? Why? Why do you think I'm onto something, or why do you think I'm wrong? Let's discuss this. Feel free to join me in the Discord for that conversation. As always, I'll make sure to drop a invite link in the bio for that. And I have missed a couple days, but I'm going to be getting back into my regular daily posting on X and Tumblr, so feel free to check me out on those at Barlo-B-Theorizing. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Much love, friends.